Hi, everyone. We'll be starting the session shortly. Just joining before to make sure everything's working on the technical side. So I just want to check first. Can everybody hear me okay? I think, Ingrid, you might be able to unmute yourself. Otherwise, there is also the chat function. Hi, everyone. I'm just about to start the session. Maybe give it another minute or two for anyone else in the process of joining. Um, Ingrid, I can see that you are in the call. Your microphone appears to be muted. Are you able to hear my audio? Otherwise, if if anyone could confirm via the chat that you are able to hear the audio as well, that'll let me know if we're ready to get started. Okay, thank you, Kemraj. And Devin, thank you. Okay, perfect, great. So as I said, yeah, we'll give it another minute for any additional joiners. Okay, I think we can perhaps look to get started. Ingrid, I saw you unmute your mic. I don't know if you wanted to give a few words of introduction. Otherwise, I'm happy to kick off the session.
Hi Nick. Does everyone hear me? Because I was having trouble with my audio.
I can hear you now. All good.
Okay, perfect. I am working from home today and I'm trying to remove all the outside noises here. So bear with me. So I just want to welcome everyone. As many of you know, my name is Ingrid Valentine. I am on the staff of the Office of Award Pre-Proposal Support, also known as APPS at RF CUNY. We provide searchable online programs that help you identify external funding opportunities by sponsors in the federal government, state and local government, industry, and nonprofit sector. On your behalf, we subscribe to vendors such as Pivot RP. It has an incredible innovation that brings together a complete list of opportunities in the sectors that I mentioned. We look forward to continuing a very good relationship with the Pivot RP team. And the topics today have been carefully selected to assist you in your role as grant officers or other designated administrators. And with that, please welcome Customer Success Manager, Nicholas. I'm going to try this. Epifaniou. Did I destroy that completely or?
And it's Epiphania, but that was quite close. Don't
Sorry.
worry, that's no worries at all. Thank you, Ingrid. And thank you, everyone, for taking the time to join this session. It's a great pleasure today for me to present to you some of the tools available, as Ingrid said, for grant officers through our platform, Pivot RP. Just a few technical notes before we kind of jump into the material. I just wanted to let you know, because this is a Teams event, all of your microphones will be by default muted. However, I am hoping that towards the end, I'll be able to unmute all of you. We'll have a bit of an extended Q&A, but typically just to maintain a cadence through the course of the session, if you have any questions about any of the functionality, what I would recommend is submitting these either via the chat function or the Q&A function. And what this will do is this will provide me with just a kind of log of the questions that I can go through at the end, so I can provide answers to all of those. And then we'll also allow a bit of time for any additional Q&A, and I can unmute your microphones as well. Another note, this session is being recorded as well, so you will be able to revisit the recording of this session as a future resource as well. Without further ado, I think we can get started with the core agenda of this workshop. So as Ingrid mentioned, as a member of staff at CUNY, you will have access to Pivot RP. For those of you who may be unfamiliar, Pivot RP is a service offered by Clarivate. It is one of our funding discovery tools. It is the most comprehensive resource for global funding information. And we've accomplished this by combining our extensive database of funding opportunities with a variety of other technology components. And this includes things like researcher profiles, which help researchers represent themselves via the system, so their interests, their possible collaborative interests as well. But also the profiles can help the users improve targeted, algorithmically generated funding recommendations as well. And we also include some other tools, as you'll see, in the areas of funding insights, so things like conferences and awarded grants. But again, the centerpiece of the platform is the extensive database of funding opportunities, which we'll go into with some detail today. As Ingrid mentioned, this session will be geared towards administrative users with a particular focus on funding discovery and communicating funding opportunities to academic audiences in the most convenient and efficient way possible. So there are a lot of administrative tools that Pivot RP enables you to use, but we will be focusing primarily on the advanced curational tools for identifying and sharing funding with appropriate researcher audiences. So I guess to give you kind of an overview of what we'll be covering over the course of this session, we will firstly be starting with some basics around how you can set up groups of users based on common interests or affiliations. And the purpose of these groups is being able to, in a very convenient and easy manner, share large sets of data around funding opportunities with those appropriate groups. We will also be taking quite a bit of time going through the funding database. So I will take you through some of the basics as well as some of the more advanced tools around navigating the funding database. So using the advanced search, customizing parameters effectively. And then we will spend a significant component of the session covering some of the ways that you as an administrator can interact with the funding content in a more meaningful way. So we'll have a look at how the funding opportunities are structured. I'll show you as well how you can track opportunities and share funding content with other users. We'll also have a look at setting up curated resources, such as lists of carefully selected funding opportunities that you can share with large audiences of researchers. We'll also be looking at curated searches, as well as setting up weekly funding alerts, and also creating institutional newsletters through the Pivot RP system. So we will get into that momentarily. Like I said, the session will be recorded. And again, any questions, please feel free to put these in the chat, and I will have a log of all the questions, and I can answer them at the end. I see Kemraj is asking, are you showing slides? Not currently. So you should be seeing the Pivot homepage. So that's fine. I guess to start with some of the basics, because some of you may be new to Pivot RP. Some of you might be a little bit more experienced. So just to cover some of the basics, I firstly want to show you how you can access Pivot RP. So if you go to the Pivot RP hosted URL for your institution, usually through the university website. Otherwise, you can also access it through here. What will happen is you will likely see a page that looks something like this. If you've never accessed Pivot RP before, it's quite easy to create an account. You can either create one using the option on the right here, and this allows you to use institutional login credentials or use an email address. So with institutional credentials, I don't believe CUNY has this currently set up. However, you can still very easily set up an account by going to use email address / create password, filling in all these fields here. You just need to take care that you use an institutional email. So this is an email address that has a CUNY domain in it. This is a security measure to ensure that the right people are able to access your instance. So you fill in this field. You can also select your institution from this dropdown, and it will sort you into your appropriate affiliated member institution. And then once you've filled in all the fields and tick this box, you will then be able to create your account. Now, in terms of accessing the administrative features, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to log into the sandbox instance that we currently use for these kinds of demonstrations. Now, in terms of administrator access, there is a pretty easy way to tell if you have admin access or not. And that is by logging into the system and then looking in the top right corner here. So the giveaway for if you have admin access is you will have this little gear labeled admin appear in the top right. And if you click into that, you'll be taken into what's known as the administrator dashboard. Now, if you do not see this option, it is likely a result of you not having administrator privileges set for your account. So what you can do is you can raise this with Ingrid, and Ingrid can grant you those privileges. You can also see some of the areas in which you can act as an administrator. So if I click into admin accounts and I go into my account here, so this is my administrator account on this sandbox license, I can go to edit and view details. And you can see here there are a variety of different administrator privileges across certain topics. So for instance, having the ability to change institution-wide settings and filters, setting internal notes, deadlines, and funding opportunities, communications and sharing funding, as well as having the ability to view reports on accounts profiles and the funding data that is being interacted with on the system. Now, we're going to be focusing over the course of the session primarily with communications and sharing funding. And we will also be looking at internal notes, deadlines, and funding opportunities. So you can double check that you have these. And then if you go back to the admin dashboard, you might not have all the full settings that I have here, but we will only be covering the ones related to grant discovery. So everything that I demonstrate here, you should hopefully have access to. But yeah, just double check that you have those settings set up. Now, one of the things I mentioned near the top of the hour is, as an administrator, depending on the specific privileges you have assigned, you will have the ability to set up groups. And essentially what this means is you can set up groups based on areas of interest. So you can see some of the groups that we've set up on our sandbox license. So there's I've set up a personal group, but we also have public groups. So any user can set up a personal group, but only an administrator can set up a personal group and a public group. And as you can see, what we've done on the license is we have set up the public groups according to areas of interest. So what you can do with this is you can set up a group for a specific interest. So as an example, climate change. And you can add other users, end users on the license to that group. And that means you can easily share funding content and other information with that specific group. In order to populate a group, so what I can do, I can show you if I set up a new group here, I can enter a name, add a brief description of the group here, and choose whether to make that group public or not. And then I can add people that should be in this group by typing in a name or an email address. I can also copy them from other groups. Another thing I can do is I can go to the profile section. So the profiles, for those of you who may not be familiar, these are a representation of your researchers and staff on the system. So your staff can access PivotRP through a user account, and they can link their user account to the appropriate researcher profile for that individual. So with that information, what you can do, so if you go to CUNY, you go to profiles, you'll be taken to a staff directory. So again, this is a sandbox license, so we don't have this, but you'll be able to see all the different departments of your institution. And you can go into those and see who represents that department. Now, because I don't have that view, I'm just going to cheat a little bit and just show you, for example, if you were to click into one of the departments and go into the staff lists, you would then be greeted with a view of the researchers in that department. Now, because we don't have departments set up on this license, what I've done is I've just opened up the search to outside institutions as well, but the view will be similar and the interactions that you can have will be very much the same. But let's say, for instance, you've clicked into one of the departments on your license, on your institutional instance. What you can do once you go to the researcher view, which will list researchers in a manner like this, you can tick these groups, tick these individuals, or select all, and add to group, and then you can add them to an existing group that you set up. And again, this can be a personal group or a public group, or you can add them to a new group. So you can put in a name, fill out the description, and then make the group public. And then that will allow you to set up that group of researchers. And as we'll cover shortly, what this will allow you to do is this will allow you to set up an audience with which you can communicate large amounts of data about funding in a very quick way. So once you set up the group, that's ready. And then when you go back to the admin dashboard, it will be visible under the Manage Groups tab. So that's just an initial step that I wanted to lead with, because now that we've set up the group, what we'll want to do is we will want to navigate the funding database and set up the appropriate resources for those groups. So that's a nice segue into the next section, which is navigating the funding database. So Depending on your level of experience with the funding database, some of this you might know, some of this you might not, but typically the funding database is quite easy to access as it is the centerpiece of the Pivot RP platform. So as such, you'll be able to conduct a search immediately after logging on. So this is the home page. And right away, you can see a shortcut to the basic search, as well as some of the additional search options, which includes the ability to browse funders alphabetically, as well as conduct an advanced search. You can also get to some funding search options by clicking on the funding tab here, which will take you to the dedicated funding section of the system. And here you'll be greeted with a variety of options to conduct a funding search. So you can search all fields, search according to funder. You can see some of the additional choices that you can make here. You can search according to keyword. So for instance, if I put in something like law as an example, the system will recommend items in our fixed taxonomy of research disciplines, and it will recommend the relevant items. Now, to clarify here, what this means is in our funding database, all of the funding opportunities are cataloged to research keywords. So if I search for mining law, that means any funding opportunity that is tagged with that research discipline will be reflected in my search. And this is something that we will explore in a bit more detail in just a few minutes. And then finally, we also have the advanced search option in the lower right corner here. We do also have the funding wheel, which if you scroll down, you'll see it is a data visualization of the funding currently available for our institution. So you might find that the data is slightly different on your end due to some of the search filters and institutional settings that you have. So that will account for any difference in funding that you see here. But the logic is with the funding wheel, it will show you the amount of funding available. And then as you move outside of the wheel, you'll see the inner rim here. This is representative of the parent terms, the parent keywords. So we currently have, as you can see, approximately 56 billion euros or dollars, depending on your institutional settings, for funding available in the areas of natural and physical sciences, mathematics, and technology. But if I move around, you'll see that this will go to other keyword areas. So energy sciences, engineering, health and medicine. Now, if I focus on health and medicine and I move out into the outer segments here, you will see that this will reflect keywords that fall under health and medicine that are a bit more specific. So under health and medicine, we have disease. And then if we move further out, under disease, we might have things like infectious diseases, and then moving even further out, something like COVID-19. So here you can see it starts with the more broad keywords, and then within each segment, it will go into the more specific subterms as well. And this is a way you can already initiate your funding search. So for instance, you can hover over, let's say, social sciences, environment planning or policy, and click that, and that will take you to that specific result. Typically, what I recommend as a person who's been using Pivot RP for quite a few years now, I recommend typically using the advanced search. And the reason for this is if I click on the advanced search, as you will see, the advanced search offers a wider array of parameters that you can add to your search query. And this is a bit more beneficial because it allows you to exercise a little bit more control over the results you are receiving, and will hopefully allow you to accomplish a more tailored search. So some of the fields that you can and parameters that you can add include the all fields. So this is typically something that I would attach at the end of the search. So if you want the search to home in on the mention of a particular word, you can put that here. And the logic is, let's say I want an opportunity that has law and immigration, or etc. That will show me funding opportunities where the word law or the word immigration are mentioned. However, if I remove immigration from or, and I go down where it says, so here you can see and then or. So now, instead of showing me funding opportunities that either say law or immigration, the search is now showing me opportunities that mention law and immigration. So here you can be more specific or more broad with the specific word that you're trying to search for. You can also attach a parameter for funders. So if you have specific funders in mind, you can search for them using the free text search option. There is also the browse or autocomplete option. So the way that this works is if you put in a word like planning, you'll see that the names of funder organizations with the word planning in them will be reflected in the automated suggestions. So this is a way that you can search for funders as well. So for instance, Department of Defense as an example. You can also add a parameter for the specific award amount that you're looking for, and you can put in a range or a figure. You can also include funding opportunities where the award amount is unspecified, and you can, of course, also select the currency in which it's represented. You can also set parameters according to a deadline window. I will revisit this shortly because there is a helpful tip that I like to show people during these demonstrations, so I'll get back to that. You can also narrow down your search according to whether the opportunity is a limited submission or not. And you can also add parameters based on things like the location of the applicant / institution. So in your case, if you were to put something like USA, this would show you all opportunities that are available to USA-based applicants. Activity location, this just denotes where the research or where the activity that's being supported needs to take place. So you can choose from a variety of locations with which to conduct that activity, that research activity. Citizenship is something that you can also select. Funding type is quite an interesting one because this allows you to narrow down your search according to the specific type of support or activity that is being conducted. So if you're looking for support for clinical trials, or traveling to conferences, events, or seminars, dissertation and thesis funding, fellowships or postdoctoral awards, institutional program or curriculum development. So if you wanted to start a new department or research unit, it would be a very interesting funding type for you. Costs that are related to publishing or dissemination of research findings is something that we also support, as well as obviously your typical project grants and innovation grants. So this is both for research, but also to take the results of research and make that and transfer those into a innovation or go-to-market concept as well. Scholarships, training, or bursaries. So this is if, as an institution, you want funding to be able to provide scholarships to academics, then this will allow you to find those opportunities as well. And then, of course, travel for research purposes, as well as some others. If you're not sure what some of these are, one resource that I can point you to, just bear with me one moment. So let me take you to the resource. So funding opportunities. If you're not sure what some of these funding types mean, we do have a piece of documentation with a table that will describe what that funding type is. So if you're not sure, feel free to refer to this, and that will provide you with a bit more guidance. The next parameter is another very important one, and this is, of course, the keyword. As I mentioned previously, all of our funding opportunities, when they are added to the system, they'll obviously be cataloged according to all of these parameters, and that will include a keyword. Typically, for this example, I like to involve a little bit of audience participation. So if there's a particular research topic or an area that you would like for me to use as the example here, please feel free to submit it to the chat and I'll pick one of your suggestions. Otherwise, I can continue with one of my examples, but please feel free. So while I'm waiting for any suggestions, what I'll show you is, okay, so we have a suggestion for artificial intelligence. So what I can do with that is if I put artificial intelligence in the keyword search, what it will do is it will recommend some keywords that appear in our taxonomy of research topics, which it thinks will be relevant. So some of these we can see maybe aren't as relevant. However, if we keep going down, we will see that there is a keyword for artificial intelligence or cybernetics. And if we look, we can see that artificial intelligence or cybernetics is a subterm, a sub keyword of computer science, which itself is a sub keyword of natural and physical sciences, mathematics, and technology. So I can select artificial intelligence or cybernetics from this option. Another thing I can do is I can also, rather than using the search box to get some automated suggestions, I can also click the browse option. And the browse option will take me to the taxonomy tree, which, as you can see, stems from these, what we would call parent terms. And if you'll recall, when we added artificial intelligence to our search query, the advanced search option tells us where artificial intelligence lies in the taxonomy tree. So if I remember correctly, it was natural and physical sciences, computer science, and then artificial intelligence or cybernetics. So we can select that. One thing that's also worth mentioning, just a tip for when you're using the keywords, I recommend trying to go as granular and specific with the keywords as possible, because the default option for the search is, the default option for browsing for keywords is, if I select artificial intelligence or cybernetics, we can see that there's a subterm underneath it, which is machine learning. Now, if I select artificial intelligence or cybernetics, and we look here, you will see that my results are exploded to include sub-entities. So what this means is, if I select artificial intelligence or cybernetics, that means automatically any subterm underneath artificial intelligence will also be included in my query. I can, of course, disable this or leave it on. But keep in mind that if you explode to include sub-entities, that means if you select something, let's say, like education, that means the search is automatically going to be exploded to include all the key terms, all the sub keywords that appear under education, which is why I recommend trying to get as close as you can to the most specific topics and then refining your search from there. If we scroll further down, we can see some additional parameters that we can use for our search. And these include applicant type. So you can see here some of the caveats. So if the applicant is an academic institution or a nonprofit or a LGBTQ plus only applicant, etc., you can select from these caveats here. You can select career stage. So this represents researchers who may be new in their field, as well as more experienced and seasoned researchers, as well as undergraduates. So if you want to select a career stage, you can do that here as well. Otherwise, you can leave it and it will just show you everything that's broadly available for these different career stages. Funder type as well is another thing that you can select. So you can see academic institution, a US federal government funder, etc. You can also search according to the country in which that funder is based. And if you scroll even further down, you will see that there are some additional search options that operate on the logic of exclusion. So what this means in contrast, everything that we've selected here, this is what we want included in the search query. These are the key criteria that we want to see reflected in the results. However, if there are things that I intentionally want to make sure are excluded from my search query, I can scroll down and add them to this section here. So for example, one of the things I mentioned earlier was the deadlines. Let's say, for example, I don't want a search query with any items that have deadlines occurring in the next 14 days, because perhaps that's too short notice to be promoting this funding opportunity to the researchers. We want to give them a little bit more time to prepare their application. So I can ask the search to not show me any funding opportunities where the deadline is within the next 14 days. So that means we'll have a 2-week buffer, and any funding opportunities that we share with the researchers, they'll have a little bit of space to prepare any applications or materials for that opportunity. If I run the search, let's see what happens. So here we can see your results might be slightly different if you based on your institutional settings. But here we'll see that this search query retrieves a healthy number of results. So here we can see the various funding opportunities in the search view. On the left here, we have some additional filters that we can use to refine the results. So we can go from recently added. We can see specifically which opportunities are limited submission. So 9 results from the initial 300 or so. Deadline certainty. So you can select between anticipated deadline. So some opportunities we know will be running on a yearly basis. We just don't know if it's 100% confirmed. So we'll add it as anticipated. But if you want to see confirmed, you can click confirmed, and that will show you funding opportunities where this deadline here has been confirmed by the funder. You can also drill down into more specific funding types. So again, the type of activities that are supported, funder types, applicant types, etc. So you will have the option to drill into these more specific filters if you want to. If you want to make any changes to your search, what you can do is don't click back, because if you're clicking back, the system will assume that you're trying to create a new query. So what you want to do to make sure that you keep all the parameters that you added is instead click refine search, which will take you back to your query, including all the parameters that you selected. And you can refine your search by adding additional parameters if necessary, and then clicking search again. And once you get a collection of results, you can, of course, interact with those opportunities in a variety of different ways. So, for example, if I select confirmed, so we have approximately 94 results confirmed. What I can do with these opportunities is I can select them in bulk, and I can opt to track those results. So what that means is if there's any change to any of the key details, so for example, let's say the deadline is brought forward or shifted, if the opportunity is tracked, then I will receive an automatic email alert if any of the details for the funding opportunity are changed. I can also share the opportunity with other users, and I can do this either by typing in a recipient's name or email address, or using the groups, which was the feature that we talked about a few minutes ago. I can select a group, and I can select from a personal group. These personal groups are usually used by researchers and can be smaller. A public group is what you can use if you want to share with a large audience. So for instance, I can select from a public group, add an optional message, and then I can also select some additional options, including the ability to put the shared opportunities on the recipient's track list. So if I select this, that means the opportunity will be shared with that user, but they will automatically also track that opportunity. So if there are any changes, again, to the key details or the deadline for that opportunity, that user will also receive a automatic email alert telling them something has changed. I can also export the funding data in a variety of formats, including Excel, MS Word, and I can choose which content is exported. So I can opt to select the full record, so all the details about the funding opportunity. I can choose standard fields, which include funder, title, and deadline, so much more summarized. And then I can select which fields I want represented in the exported file, and I can select from the options here. And once I click submit, I will receive an email with an attachment that I can download, and that will include my exported funding opportunities. I can also dismiss funding opportunities. So this means I'd be careful doing this if you're an administrator, because this means that these items, if you dismiss them, they will be removed from your search, and they also won't come up in any other searches that you conduct. So just exercise a bit of caution when using the dismiss option. We will get into the curational elements shortly, but firstly, before doing that, I think it could be beneficial for us to just very quickly have a look at the overview of the funding opportunity profiles. So every funding opportunity that you see here, if you click into it, will have its own profile. And this profile will list all the key details about that opportunity, whether it's the funder information, the amount awarded, the eligibility profile, so who they are accepting applications from, and then, of course, detailed information about upcoming deadlines. You'll also notice, as an administrator, you have the ability to leave notes and annotate funding opportunities. And these are annotations that are visible to all users on your institutional instance of Pivot RP. So for example, if I scroll up, I can add a contact note. So if there's an internal contact at CUNY that I recommend the user or the academic gets in touch with before submitting their application, I can put the custom contact information there, and it will be reflected underneath the funder contact. I can also add notes about the deadline. So let's say, as an example, so here we can see the preliminary proposal for this opportunity. The deadline is on the 23rd of January, which is fine. But let's say, for example, I would like the researcher to submit their proposal to me just to go over it before we submit it fully. What I can do as an administrator is I can add a deadline. I can set the date, what's due. So for example, expression of intent. And I can set that for, let's say, if the date for the preliminary proposal is the 23rd, then maybe I can do something in December. So I can tell the user what's due, what's expected from them, as well as a note with some additional details. And then if I click save, you will see that my deadline note is now included in the deadline view for that opportunity. We do also have a generic note that you can add. So if your note is not related to the deadline or to the contact, there is a generic add note option, and this will allow you to add anything else that you think might be important for the researcher to know, but can't be communicated either through the deadline note or the contact note. And you can apply this note for all opportunities under the same funder. You can choose to make this note private, so that will make it visible to you, but not to other users. And then I can choose an expiration date, which is optional, of course. But this means essentially, once the expiration date is passed, that note ceases to be visible on this funding opportunity. There are also some additional interactions that you can have, you can conduct with the opportunities, and you'll see some of these were also visible in the search view. So you'll remember when I selected some of these opportunities, I had some options here. I also have these same options on the individual opportunity page. So as an admin, again, I can track this opportunity. End users can also track funding opportunities, and they can also share them. However, only administrators have the ability to share with large groups of, let's say, an entire department of researchers, as well as put the opportunity on the recipient's track list. Now, I think this leads us nicely to some of the additional curations and curational actions that we can conduct. So some of the ones that I wanted to bring to your attention, because these can be quite helpful. Let's say, for example, I want to set up a curated list of opportunities. So a curated list is basically a group of funding opportunities that I think are particularly of interest to my research audience and are carefully selected from my funding search. So if I select some of these opportunities and I click curate, I can then add these to a list. So this would be, as an example, artificial intelligence highlights, monthly highlights, let's say, as an example. Oh, whoops, sorry, that's the search view. I need to create a new list and then add artificial intelligence monthly. And now that curated list, that is now saved to my account. So if I go to the little house icon here and I go to my curated opportunities, we will see here that this will take us to the funding dashboard, which allows me to see all of my tracked opportunities, all of my saved searches, as well as my curated lists. So here we can see my curated lists includes the list that I set up for artificial intelligence funding. And what I can do with this information is I can edit my curated list. So I can choose, I can edit the name, I can set to display it, which makes it a public resource. So that means any user who logs into Pivot RP at my institution, if they go to the funding dashboard by clicking any of these, they will automatically have a link to the artificial intelligence monthly. So you would know if you go to public curated lists and searches, if it appears here, then it is live and public for all users to access. So I can set display to public. I can choose the sort order for the results. So you can choose between which ones have the most closely approaching deadline. You can arrange them according to title, the funder name, the amount, as well as when it was added to the system. I can add co-owners to my curated list. So these are other admins who I can give the ability to edit and add opportunities to the curated list. I can add a note to display, and then I can click save. If I want to edit a curated or add opportunities to, if I want to edit a curated list, sorry, what I can do is I can, again, select the opportunities. If I want to remove one, I can simply delete the opportunity or delete the entire list. And then at any time I want, if I am conducting another search, let's say I find some other funding opportunities and I click curate, it will ask me if I want to create a new list or I can add it to that existing list that I set up before. And again, that will appear in curated opportunities. So if I refresh that, yeah, we can see those opportunities now appear here. And as you'll remember, because I've now set this to a public list, it will now be available in the public curated list. So the reason it's not appearing here is because I'm logged in as the person who owns it, but to any other user, it will appear as a public curated list or resource. So this is a very helpful way if you want to cherry pick certain funding opportunities. You can just then display the resource as something that's accessible to researchers. You can even share a link to the list with them as well. Another thing that you can do is quite handy, that's quite handy and can actually save you a bit of time. If you don't want to go through the effort of constantly maintaining a list of funding like this, what you can do is instead of setting up a curated list, you could set up a curated search. And the way that the curated search works is, let's say, for example, I don't want to select specific funding opportunities. I want all funding that exists and will be added to the system under the search query that I've set up here. What I can do with my search query is I can save the search, I can choose a name for it, I can decide if I would like to receive a weekly email containing new or updated opportunities. This is a feature that end users also have access to. So at the start of every week, I'll receive a funding email with any opportunities that have been added or updated as long as they match my search criteria. So this will allow the system to work automatically to update these opportunities and share that information with me. And then I can click save here. And then if I want, I can go back to the funding dashboard. So again, accessible here. So because that was a saved search, I can select saved search here. And I can find my search. So not Africa education, artificial intelligence funding. And we can see my saved search. So we can see if there are any new results. So again, because I just saved this search up now, I set it up now. So there are currently 0 new results. We can see my total results. So the number on the left is the total results. The number on the right is the number of results that are limited submission. So that's what the 2 numbers mean for anyone who's not sure. We can see as well that my search is currently operating as an email, a weekly email alert. How do I know this? Because the search has a little post icon next to it. So here you can see some of the searches that I've set up do not have this activated, so they are currently not active. But if I want to disable or enable an alert, I can select options and I can click alert email off or set it back on. And then I can also share the search, rename it, refine it, or delete it entirely. But also very importantly, you will see that there's an option to move it to a curated search. So if I move this search to a curated search, much like the curated list that we just set up, this will now appear if I go to curated opportunities. We now see my curated searches. Artificial intelligence funding appears on the left-hand side and is now a publicly available resource for anyone on my Pivot RP instance. So this means that anyone can access this, see what funding is available, and because this is based on a search query, the results will update automatically if there are any new opportunities added that match my criteria, which is different to the curated lists, which are much more selected and they require a little bit more manual maintenance. So with the curated searches, you can put together your search query and you can let the system automatically bring in this information. You can select display here to make it publicly visible. And you can share this link with other users. You can also use this as a static resource. So what I mean by this, as an example, the University of Arizona, they've set up curated searches according to various research topics or specific funders. And what they've done is they've taken the link that they're able to generate and they've hosted it on an external web page. So if I go to the University of Arizona, their external funding website, and I scroll down, they have a list of curated opportunity search by category. And these are all searches that they constructed using this method. And they simply copied the link and they've added it to this web page here. Keep in mind, if you do this with CUNY resources, the user will need to be within the CUNY network or have a CUNY Pivot RP account to access those resources. Otherwise, they'll be taken to a blank search. But this is one of the ways that you can share content within the system externally and get researchers interested in not just the content that you've put together, but also with the system as well, so they can engage individually with the system. If I am a researcher who's accessed this curated search, the benefits of this is that I can see which opportunities are available. And if I want, I can view the curated search as a regular search. And then what I can do as an end user is I can refine the search even further and then save it as my own personal search and weekly alert. So this is a way that you can, in addition to setting up researchers with some of these resources, you can also encourage them to engage with the system and duplicate your curated searches and set up their own personal searches as well, using your curated search as a blueprint. Now, we've covered the curated lists, we've covered the curated searches. Another feature that I wanted to show you, two features, and then we can open up the floor for an extended Q&A. I can also show you some additional resources and reading if you're interested. Another way that we allow you to share funding content with researchers at your institution is via our newsletters feature. So this is a feature that is hosted within Pivot RP, and this is accessible by going to the admin dashboard and going to tools, where you will see, in addition to curated searches, curated lists, an option to create and manage newsletters. So again, just double check that you have the right administrator privileges enabled, and you should see all of these. With the newsletters, I can create a newsletter here. And this will allow me to name a newsletter. So let's say if we go with that example, Artificial Intelligence Monthly, I can then choose funding opportunities to share. And again, I can choose between a curated search, which again is a dynamic resource. So because it's based on search criteria, that means the resource will automatically update. So I can select this. If I want to select my more carefully hand-picked opportunities, I can go to my curated lists. Again, you just have to make sure that you are manually and automatically keeping this list up to date. This is why some institutions prefer to use the search, because it allows them to automate the process a little bit. So I can choose artificial intelligence funding. I can pick the sort order for the results. So this is what the end users will see when they receive their newsletter. So it can be arranged according, the results can be arranged according to title, name of the funder, the deadline, so soonest to latest, amount, highest to lowest, last published, most recent to oldest, and then relevance. So let's keep it as deadline for now. You can also add a heading and a custom message. So funding opportunities. We also have a customizable box of text that you can use to add additional information, and you can also hyperlink as well. So if there's any external information that you would like to link to, you can also put that here. You can also add an image. So if you wanted to put an institutional banner or something like that, you can. Although keep in mind, depending on your institutional settings, keep in mind, so if I go to custom branding, your institution might already have settings set up for the newsletter. So your newsletters will already have a color scheme as well as be branded with an email logo. So you can just double check. But otherwise, you can see it's very customizable. So you can put a variety of different information here. And this information will be included in the email along with all the information about the funding opportunities. You can also opt to send a preview email. So I'll do that now as well. So while that's generating, I'll just go through the rest of these and then I'll show you what that will look like. I can choose a group of recipients. So I can choose to send to all registered Pivot RP users on the system, or I can send to groups. And again, this is going back to the groups that we set up. So I can select a personal group or a public group. So if I had set up a public group for artificial intelligence, I could have just ticked that, and then that will go to anyone in that group. I can also schedule the message, and I can choose to have it be repeating or not. So keep in mind, if you're using a search rather than a list, you can set it to repeating, and the opportunities will automatically update on a weekly basis. If you choose a list, you'll just want to make sure that your opportunities, the list that you have, that you've taken out anything that's expired and you've added new ones. Again, this is why a lot of institutions prefer to use the search rather than the list, because it's less maintenance. You can select time of day, so AM, PM, as well as the date to send the initial newsletter. You can also add co-owners. So these are people that will also have the ability to edit and send or manage that newsletter that you've set up. And then you can select whether to make the newsletter actively published or save it as a draft only. So if you make it actively published, that means it'll go out depending on whatever schedule you set for that newsletter. You can also just save it as a draft only, and then you can access it again. So here you'll see we're in the manage newsletters tool. You can access that also by going to the admin dashboard, going to manage newsletters, and we'll see. So because I have not yet sent that newsletter, this will appear as an inactive newsletter. And then I can select options, I can edit it, and then I can save it as a published newsletter. I'm just going to check if I've received that newsletter example, and I have. Let me show you what it looks like. So this is the preview that I've just received. So funding news for Nick Epifaniou, artificial intelligence funding. So that was the name of the newsletter that I set up with some example text. And here you can see that this will include all the opportunities that are part of that search. And the users will have the ability to go to see more, which essentially will take them to the search results in Pivot RP. Yeah, it's taking a little bit of time to load, so I think we can move along. Here we go. So here, when I click see more in the newsletter, it takes me to that search within Pivot RP if I'm the end user. Another tool that I wanted to show you is the embedded search functionality. So in addition to being able to use my searches to share on external web pages, such as what the University of Arizona has done, or use them to build the foundation for a newsletter, I can also embed my search results in other websites that are not Pivot RP. So I will show you what this means momentarily. If I go to create embedded search, This will allow me to name it. So once again, artificial intelligence funding. I can choose which funding opportunity to share. And again, I can choose from the dynamic searches or the manual lists. We go with the search. Again, we can pick the sort order for results display. We can add any co-owners. Again, these are people who have the ability to manage the resource as well. And then finally, I can save the embedded search. And as you will see, by doing this, it will generate a code. This is a representation of what the code looks like when you put it into another web page. And this means that you can host a direct feed of available funding based on your search criteria on another web page. So just as an example of how other universities have used this, if I go to, let's see, LMU, so this is the Ludwig Maximilian University in Munich. They've set up a few of their own embedded searches, and they look something like this. So here what they've done is they've taken this iframe code, they've put it on their website, and now whenever a researcher comes across this external web page, they have a direct view into the feed from Pivot RP, and they can select details to find out more information. They can also click into the funding opportunities to learn more as well. And as long as they have an account or register, they'll be able to see this. And you can arrange these. So you'll see here, they haven't arranged these according to topics, but rather themes. So advanced excellence, early excellence, incoming programs, etc. But again, depending on your search, you can craft these resources according to any sort of thematic area that you would like. And then finally, as an administrator, you also have the ability to add your own internal opportunities. So these are opportunities that are only available to researchers at CUNY. So as a result, we wouldn't by default add them to our system because we want this. The idea with Pivot RP is we want to host a comprehensive breakdown of funding opportunities that have a wide enough net. But here you can add internal opportunities that will only be reflected on your institutional instance of Pivot. So you can choose if this is for your institution only or not. You can add the name of the opportunity, the funder, which will, as a default, will be your institution. And you can then fill in these other fields. You can also add keywords to make it easier to locate according to our taxonomy tree. And then once you make the internal funding opportunity actively published, that means if a user sets up a search with any of the parameters you used here, the internal opportunity will appear in their results. So this can also be a handy way of sharing any internal funding data that you might want researchers to be aware of. And I think that in fact covers the material that I wanted to get through today. So what I'm going to do before I go through some of the questions that may have been collected, I just want to point you to some additional resources. So if you do want to learn any more about the available admin tools, what you can do, if you go to the homepage, your homepage for Pivot RP, and you look in the lower right corner here, you'll see links to various tips and resources. So you can click Contact Us, which will allow you to access our support team. So if you have if you're experiencing any issues or have any technical questions, you can submit a support ticket, and one of our technicians will be able to assist you. We also have a variety of how-to documentation, as well as additional tips for funding and profiles, as well as some short YouTube videos that also detail some of the functionality. So again, as I mentioned, this session is recorded, so you can use this. But if you very quickly want to revisit a particular tool or topic, we do have a variety of other resources, and these are all hosted on our Knowledge Center. So I'll just put a link in the chat for you as well. Videos, so these will be hosted on our YouTube page, and they include instructions for administrators as well as end users. So everything we covered, you'll be able to find information about here as well. But other than that, I think that covers everything. So what I will now do is I will see if I can go about unmuting the participants. If not, please feel free to submit any additional questions via the chat, and I'll get to those. I'm just going to double check that. So I think everyone should now have their mic enabled. Let me know if not. Otherwise, please feel free to submit a message via the chat. I'm just going to have a look. I'm not seeing many questions via the chat, but I'll check the Q&A. Oh. But in the meantime, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate. Okay, I can see that we do, in fact, have a question in the Q&A. In order to get admin access, do we need to initiate this with our grant officer, or is it automatic by campus? This will need to be initiated with your grant officer. So Ingrid, I believe you put some information in the chat about how users can go about this.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yep, all good.
Perfect. Yes, I did mention it before. Great question, though. The initial contact, you have to contact the grant officer. If you don't have a grants office, a lot of campuses have a sponsored programs office, then it would be the director for that office. You get permission from them, I'll get an email, and obviously you have to have an account, you have to be registered before I can give you that access. However, I have to say that the list of admins are very limited because of the information that's available to the admin. You have, I believe it's Nick, correct me if I'm wrong, but as an admin, you also have access to other people's accounts. Is that correct?
It depends on your admin settings. So if you go to admin accounts,
right. So
yeah,
thank you.
yeah, depending on what's set there,
right.
Some users, some admin users will also be able to manage accounts as well.
Right. So so in that email to me, it would be beneficial if the grant officer or the director for sponsored programs advises me as to what type of access you would need. And I will do that. Does that make sense?
I just wanted to add as well, again, because we've been largely focusing on curational tools. If there is anything else, then yeah, they can then yeah, Ingrid, what you've described, then that's the best way forward, probably.
Hi, this is Carla. Ingrid, can I just ask a follow-up? So in order to just get the level for these curational tools, what kind of access should my grant officer be asking for?
Specifically that, let's see, I think Nick is pulling that up.
So in order to have access to what we covered, you will at the very least want access to these key verticals. So internal notes, deadlines, and funding opportunities, and communications and sharing funding. There is the ability if you need to. So for instance, there are reports that tell you how researchers are interacting with the opportunities. If you think you might need access to this as well, you can request this access, and I can perhaps follow up with Ingrid to provide some additional. We do have a lot of reading and other resources for reports and things like that, but at the very least, I would recommend as a grants officer having these two.
Nick, I have a question. the
Sure.
communications and sharing of funding opportunities, isn't that available to the regular user as well, the end user?
Um, they can share funding opportunities to a degree, but not in the same way as the administrator. So a user can, for instance, share a funding opportunity with a personal group they've set up. So maybe 5 to 10 other researchers. But the administrator will really be the one who has the tools to communicate with large audiences in a very expedient manner.
Okay, thank you.
So end users, for example, they won't be able to. They can set up personal groups, but they can't manage public ones. They cannot curate opportunities. They cannot manage newsletters.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
No worries at all. Um, I will. I know we have another 15 minutes on the clock, so I'll stay behind to answer any questions. I know some of you may have other engagements, so I just wanted to take the opportunity now to say thanks again for joining. I hope that this was helpful for you. Um, if you do have any questions, you can get in touch with Ingrid. Again, if it's a more technical question, I did mention you can also contact our support team. Um, in addition to that, if you have any questions for me that occur maybe as an afterthought to this call, please feel free to get in touch as well. As we mentioned at the start, the session is recorded, so I will just take the next few days to process the recording, and then that will be available for all of you as well.
Carla, if you're still there, what college are you associated with?
I'm at Gutman.
I'm sorry?
Gutman Community College.
Oh, yes. Okay, thank you. I'll make sure to keep an eye out for anything from there regarding
Thank you.
access.
Hi, Nick. This is Kemraj Prasad from City Tech. I just had a quick question.
Sure.
Well, firstly, just thank you for all the information. I've been sitting through a lot of these webinars and things like that, and this one was very pleasant. I was able to get a lot of good information, and it was very clear and concise. It's not so much a question about what we went through, but I'm just looking at my my home screen for Pivot RP, and I noticed that I don't have the news option next to the awarded grants. At the top there, the header. See, you got
Okay.
funding, profiles, conferences, awarded grants. I don't have news here.
So just to clarify, so the news is an additional component that we offer, but because this is a sandbox license, we have default access to it. Essentially, what this means is that CUNY did not want to include the news component in the subscription. So the basic subscription is you'll have access to funding, profiles, conferences, and awarded grants, and the news is just an add-on.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure it wasn't me or I was missing something. All right. Thank
Sure,
you.
yeah, no worries at all. But yep, like I said, I'll stay on for the remainder of the call if there are any questions. But um, if if you do need any help, including sort of, I guess maybe. So sometimes when I have additional time on these calls, if there's maybe room for additional one-to-one support, but I think like we have kind of been going through that as well. So
Nick, I have a question.
sure.
What if after this session, there's a grant officer or administrative person that wants more, perhaps one-on-one or maybe a group of faculty at their college to have a similar session like this, but it would be more, I guess, customized to their needs. How would they go about setting that up?
Well, I mean, firstly, that's something that if it's specifically for administrators and grant officers, that's something that we'd be happy to support with. So, what I would maybe advise is feel free to get in touch with Andy or myself, and we can look to hopefully set that up for you. It is an area where we do provide a lot of support, so it's no issue for us.
Okay. How would be the best way to contact you?
For Andy and myself, I would go via email. So what I'll do is I will just put our details. If you bear with me one moment. So that is me, and I'm just going to double check Andy's so I give you the right one.
Perfect.
It should have the same format.
This, Nick.
Sorry?
Thank you so much for doing this. I just want to also say that it was very clear and very precise and detailed. The whole session, your whole presentation was excellent.
Thank you. I mean, it's a lot of information, so hopefully, I know it can be a lot to process, but hopefully it's comprehensive enough to give you an idea of what you can do with the system. And then, of course, if with these sessions, we're not telling you have to use all of these. The reason that we give you all this choice is to enable you to meet what's available in the system to your day-to-day requirements. So if you are interested in investigating any of these further, for instance, the examples that I showed you with the saved searches or the embedded searches, I'd be happy to share some further examples with you, and provide any additional guidance that you need to put these in place. But I suppose if there are no more questions, I guess I'm just going to double check. Doesn't seem to be anything in chat or Q&A. I'll let you all have 9 minutes back of your afternoon. It was a pleasure to run this session for you. Again, hope it was helpful. And yeah, keep an eye out for the recording, and feel free to get in touch with any questions in the meantime.
Thank you. Have a great day, everyone.